Brilliant golden light poured through the large glass panels of Grace Hospital's lobby, where the inauguration ceremony for the new pediatric wing occurred. Applause erupted as Ethan Marshall, a white American billionaire with neatly trimmed blonde hair and deep blue eyes, stepped up to the podium. At 38, Ethan was the epitome of success, a renowned philanthropic CEO who had donated millions of dollars to medical projects. His charcoal gray suit fit his body perfectly, but the smile on his lips was stiff, concealing a deep wound. Just hours earlier, in his private office in Midtown Manhattan, he had received the final test results from his doctor. Irreversible infertility, the consequence of a complex surgery in his teenage years. No children, no heir. The dream of a family, of children's laughter echoing through his empty house, had vanished like mist. Ethan gripped his glass of water tightly, trying to focus on the speech. He said this pediatric wing is a beacon of hope for thousands of children, his voice deep and firm, though his heart was in turmoil. The crowd applauded, and cameras flashed. But all he wanted was to leave, to escape the curious eyes of the press and the gaping emotional void inside him. When the ceremony ended, he retreated into the banquet hall, where fresh floral arrangements and elegant tables had been meticulously arranged. He took a sip of water, trying to dispel the dull ache in his chest. Not just emotional pain, but the irregular heartbeats he had been ignoring for months. Then he saw her. Through the crowd, under the warm lights, Maya Thompson stood there, radiant like the sun after a storm. Maya, a Black American pediatrician, possessed an elegant beauty, her natural curly hair tied up high and her warm, deep brown eyes glowing. She wore a simple navy blue dress, but her presence filled the entire space. 5 years ago, Maya had been Ethan's whole world, the woman who made him believe in love, in life's simple moments, like sharing a cup of coffee or walking beside a lake. Then she disappeared without a word, leaving him with a broken heart and questions that never found answers. Ethan froze, his hand trembling slightly around the glass. But what took his breath away wasn't Maya. Beside her stood 2 children, a boy and a girl, about 4 years old, clinging to her hands like little birds nestled against their mother. The boy, with curly black hair and eyes the same piercing blue as Ethan's, looked around curiously. With a radiant smile and dimples on her cheeks, the girl pointed excitedly at a bunch of balloons. Time stopped for Ethan. The boy's eyes, undeniable, were a mirror of his own, the same ones he had seen in childhood photos from the family album. "Mommy, look!" the girl chirped, her voice pure and clear. Then she turned to Ethan, eyes sparkling. "Daddy, can we get a balloon?" Ethan's world collapsed. The word daddy struck like lightning through his chest. He looked at Maya, searching for an explanation, but her face shifted from joy to panic. She clutched the children's hands tighter, her lips pressed together as if to speak, but no words came out. Ethan felt his chest tighten, and his breathing grew labored. "Maya," he whispered, voice cracked. "Ethan," she replied, her voice trembling as if that name carried an ocean of memories. I didn't expect to see you here." The boy looked up, curious. "Mommy, is that the man from your stories?" Ethan felt dizzy. "Stories? What stories?" He wanted to ask, to shout, but his throat felt constricted. The crowd around them continued chatting and laughing, oblivious to the storm tearing through him. He looked down at the little girl. "Lila," he heard Maya call her, and saw a smile identical to Maya's, but the eyes were unmistakably his. Noah, as Maya said, had a thoughtful gaze as if trying to understand the unfamiliar man before him. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, voice hoarse. He turned abruptly, pushing through the crowd, leaving behind Maya's voice calling out, "Ethan, wait!" she cried. But he didn't stop. He needed air, space to breathe and process what was happening. He burst into a quiet corridor, leaning against a cold wall, hand clutching his chest. His heart raced erratically, sharp pain radiating from his chest down his left arm. "No, no, it can't be," he muttered, his voice shaky. The doctor said, "Impossible." Noah's eyes burned into his mind like an unspoken accusation. Those children. His? How could that be? He had lived with the truth that he could never father children and accepted it like a life sentence. But those eyes, the word daddy from Lila's mouth, and Maya's panicked gaze had shattered everything he thought he knew. He slid down to the floor, knees buckling, breath ragged. The hallway was silent. Only his heart pounding echoed in his ears. Then everything went dark. When Ethan opened his eyes, he saw a stark white ceiling and heard the steady beeping of machines. A nurse stood beside him, checking the monitor. "Mr. Marshall, you fainted," she said gently. "We brought you to the recovery room. You're stable now, but your heart is under a lot of stress. You need to rest." Ethan struggled to sit up, his head still spinning. "Maya, is she here?" he asked, voice raspy. The nurse nodded. "Ms. Thompson brought you in. She waited until the doctor confirmed you were stable, then left with the two children." Ethan closed his eyes, pain and hope colliding inside him. Maya had been here. She had cared for him, if only briefly. But the children, Noah and Lila, who were they? Why had she called them Marshall? And why, after 5 years of silence, had she returned with a secret that could change his entire life? He clenched the hospital sheet, a fire of determination igniting within him. "I need to find her," he whispered, not to the nurse, but to himself. "I need to know the truth." In spring 2017, fresh air filled the Central City Park, where a charity event for orphaned children occurred. Ethan Marshall, then 30 years old, stepped out of a black SUV and adjusted his navy blue tie. As a young billionaire, he had come to give a speech and present a significant donation, but his eyes weren't drawn to the crowd or the camera lenses. Instead, he was captivated by a woman kneeling beside a white tent, tying the shoelaces of a little boy. Maya Thompson, a 28-year-old black American pediatrician with a radiant smile and curly hair tied up high, exuded a warmth that stirred something in Ethan, a man accustomed to cold boardrooms, making his heart slightly flutter. Maya looked up and met Ethan's gaze. "Mr. Marshall, right?" she said, standing and brushing her hands off on her slightly wrinkled white coat. "I've read about your foundation. Thank you for what you're doing for the kids." Her voice was sincere, without a hint of flattery, and Ethan, so used to praise, suddenly found himself caught off guard. "Just part of the job," he replied, a rare smile forming on his lips. "Are you a doctor here?" "Pediatrician. Grace Hospital," Maya answered, pointing to the tent where nurses conducted health checks for the children. "I volunteer on weekends so the kids can have a little more joy." She bent down to hand a balloon to the boy, and her smile seemed to light up the entire park corner. They started talking. At first, small talk about the event, but then shifting to more personal topics. Maya's favorite book, Ethan's habit of drinking black coffee, or how children always found joy in the most minor things. When the event ended, Ethan, not wanting to let the moment slip away, invited Maya for a coffee at a small shop near the park. "No bodyguards, no media," he said, half joking, "just coffee." Maya laughed and agreed. At the cafe, they sat by the window, sunlight pouring in and catching the glint in her brown eyes. She talked about overnight shifts at the hospital and a little patient who made her cry when he squeezed her hand to thank her. For the first time in years, Ethan shared the pressures of running a business empire, about the nights he sat alone in his penthouse, staring out at the city and feeling utterly isolated. "Sometimes," he said, "I forget who I am beyond the name on the office door." Maya tilted her head, her gaze soft. "Then let me remind you, you're the guy who brought balloons to the kids today." "That's Ethan, I see." That sentence shattered an invisible wall inside Ethan. They began seeing each other more often. On weekend mornings, Maya would drag him to the farmer's market, where she picked out vegetables and teased him for not knowing the difference between kale and lettuce. In the evenings, they strolled by the lake, the water reflecting the city lights. Maya shared stories of her difficult childhood, growing up in a poor neighborhood where she learned to dream through books borrowed from the library. Ethan, for the first time, opened up about his mother, who had died when he was young, and how he built his career to prove he was more than just the son of a wealthy family. Their love wasn't loud or flashy. It was built from simple moments, sharing a cookie at the cafe, sitting on a park bench watching kids fly kites, or the way Maya held his hand during an outdoor movie screening and whispered that she loved how he smiled. Ethan, who always controlled everything, let himself fall freely into love. Maya, who had once feared love because of past wounds, found safety in his arms. One summer afternoon, under the canopy of an ancient oak tree in the park, Ethan knelt and held Maya's hand. "Maya Thompson," he said, his voice trembling, "you are my home. I want to build forever with you. Will you marry me?" The diamond ring sparkled in its velvet box, but Maya's eyes shone brighter than any jewel. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, Ethan. 1,000 times, yes." That night, they danced in the living room of Maya's tiny apartment. No music, just laughter and the rhythm of their hearts. Maya pinned a photo of them to the fridge, next to her hospital shift calendar. For the first time, Ethan placed a picture of Maya on his office desk, where only financial reports used to sit. They dreamed of a house with a backyard, of children running around, of a future that belonged to both of them. But even in their happiest moments, a quiet shadow crept in. Ethan knew about his infertility, but he hadn't told Maya. He naively hoped that love would be enough to overcome any obstacle and that some miracle would change the diagnosis. He wanted to protect her, to protect their dream, but his silence was quietly digging a chasm between them. Maya, in quiet moments, sensed Ethan's unease. She asked him about the future and starting a family, but he always evaded, a strained smile hiding the pain. "We'll have everything, Maya," he said, but his eyes wouldn't meet hers. She wondered if he was hiding something, if their love was strong enough to survive the secrets left unspoken. Autumn arrived, bringing with it cold winds and inevitable questions. One evening, after a tense family dinner, where Ethan's parents repeatedly mentioned an heir and grandchildren, Maya held his hand by the lake, her voice trembling. "Ethan, you want children, don't you? You need to be honest with me." Ethan looked at her, his heart constricting. He had known this moment would come, but never imagined it would hurt this much. "Maya," he whispered, I can't give you a family." The crisp autumn wind swept across the lake, where the city lights reflected like scattered stars. Maya Thompson stood beside Ethan Marshall, her hand gripping his tightly, but her eyes were filled with worry. The question she had just asked, "You want children, don't you?" hung between them, sharp as a blade. Ethan, his blonde hair tousled under the moonlight, lowered his head, his deep blue eyes heavy with burden. He had postponed this moment for too long, hoping that love would be enough to conceal the truth. But now, standing before the woman he loved more than anything, he could no longer hide. "Maya," Ethan said, his voice hoarse. I can't give you a family. Maya froze as if his words had sucked all the air from around her. Can't? She repeated, her voice trembling. What do you mean, Ethan? He took a deep breath, his chest tightening like a vice. When I was 15, I was in a car accident. An emergency surgery saved my life, but it left lasting damage. The doctors said my chances of having children naturally were near zero. I've done tests, many times. The most recent one was last year. The results haven't changed. He paused, looking at her, waiting for a reaction. I'm infertile, Maya. Silence fell over them. Maya let go of his hand and stepped back, as if physical distance might help her process what she had just heard. She wrapped her arms around herself, her deep brown eyes glistening with tears. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice breaking. We've talked about the future, about a home, about children. You knew I wanted that. Why did you keep it from me? Ethan clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. I was afraid, Maya. I was worried if you knew, you'd leave. I wanted to believe that our love would be enough to overcome it. I hoped, foolishly, that some miracle would change things. He gave a bitter laugh, his voice cracking. But there's no miracle. Maya shook her head, tears streaking down her cheeks. You didn't trust me, she whispered. You thought I'd leave you just because of that? Ethan, I love you, not for what you can give me. But I deserve to know the truth. I earned the right to choose. Her words cut deep. Ethan stepped forward, wanting to hold her, but Maya raised her hand to stop him. Don't, she said, her voice firmer. Let me think. In the days that followed, the air between them was heavy as lead. Maya continued going to Grace Hospital, working night shifts and caring for her little patients with a faint smile. But inside, she was a storm. She had always dreamed of a family of children with her smile and Ethan's eyes. Growing up in a poor neighborhood, where love often came with conditions, Maya had found safety in Ethan. But now she questioned whether their love could survive without the truth, without the dream she had long carried in her heart. Ethan wasn't doing any better. He locked himself in his office, staring out the window at the traffic below. In the evenings, he drove to the lake and stood alone where he had once proposed to Maya. The ring in his coat pocket, a bitter reminder of a promise he might not be able to keep. He called his doctor and requested another test, but the results were the same. No hope. He wrote letters to Maya, then tore them up, unsure how to fix what he had broken. One evening, after a tense family dinner at the Marshall estate, the pressure from Ethan's parents became the last straw. His mother, with her polite smile, asked Maya about their plans for grandchildren. Maya smiled back, but inside, the wound bled. As they walked to the cold parking lot, Maya turned to Ethan. I need you to tell me the truth. Just once more, she said, her voice shaking. Do you want me to stay, even if I can't give up my dream of being a mother? Ethan looked at her, his heart breaking. Maya, I love you more than anything, but I can't give you what you want, and I can't bear the thought of you staying and then regretting it. She nodded, tears falling. Then you've chosen for me, she said, voice choked. But I can't build love on silence. The next day, Maya asked Ethan to meet her at the field where he had proposed. Under the ancient oak tree, the fading autumn light fell on her as she slipped the diamond ring from her finger and placed it into his palm. I'll always love you, she said, voice breaking. But I can't give up my dream. And you can't ask me to. Ethan clutched the ring, feeling as if his heart were being torn apart. Maya, please, he whispered, but she shook her head and walked away. He stood there, watching her disappear into the tall grass, the ring cold in his hand. When she was out of sight, he dropped to his knees, tears falling. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but only the wind answered. Maya returned to her small apartment, where pieces of Ethan still lingered, the shirt he left behind, and the photo on the fridge. She sat on the sofa, hugging a pillow, letting her tears fall freely. She had thought Ethan was home, a place where she could belong. But now, all she had left was emptiness and one aching question. Was she wrong to walk away? Could love be enough to mend a shattered dream? Maya threw herself into work in the following weeks, trying to fill the void. She cared for a young cancer patient, holding the boy's hand through the pain, telling herself she could still create meaning, even without Ethan. But each night, as the hospital lights dimmed, she felt the pain of loss like a heartbeat that never stopped. In his cold penthouse, Ethan stared at Maya's photo on his desk, wondering if he could rewrite the past. He knew he had been wrong to keep the truth from her, but he didn't know how to make it right. All he knew was that no matter what the world called him, a successful billionaire, he had lost the one thing that truly mattered, Maya and the dream of a future with her. The winter of 2017 cloaked the city in a thick fog, as if the weather mirrored the pain within Maya Thompson. After parting ways with Ethan Marshall, she returned to her small apartment, where remnants of him quietly lingered. A coffee mug he used often, a photo of the two of them stuck to the fridge. Maya, a 28-year-old Black American pediatrician, tried to fill the void with work at Grace Hospital. She took night shifts, caring for young patients with a strained smile, but every time she came home, the silence wrapped around her like a chokehold. She had called Ethan once, then twice, on sleepless nights, but he didn't answer. By dawn, she accepted that he had chosen to leave her, just as she had once walked away from him. Maya's life became a blur of repetition. Hospital, home, tears, repeat. She tried to focus on her patients and the children's smiles when she handed them candy after checkups. But one morning, during a grueling 12-hour shift, a sudden wave of dizziness forced her to steady herself against a wall. A nurse, Sarah, rushed over, concerned. "Dr. Thompson, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Maya replied weakly, though her heart was racing. She assumed it was exhaustion. After all, she had barely slept for weeks. But when the dizziness returned the next day, Sarah gently persuaded her to get a blood test. "Just to be sure," she said with quiet insistence. That night, in the dim light of her apartment bathroom, Maya sat on the edge of the tub, hands trembling as she held a pregnancy test. She had bought it on the way home, half believing, half doubting. When two clear lines appeared, it felt like the ground beneath her gave way. "No, no way," she whispered, repeating the words like a mantra. Ethan had told her he was infertile, that doctors confirmed he could never have children. But the test didn't lie. She took 2 more, and the result was the same. The next morning, Maya took a half-day off and visited her OB/GYN, Dr. Elena Carter, a friend from her residency days. After an ultrasound and blood work, Elena looked at Maya with an astonished and cautious expression. "You're pregnant with twins, about 8 weeks along," she said. "2 babies. Healthy." Maya gripped her hands, her mind spinning. But the father, he was diagnosed as infertile. How is this possible? Elena sighed, pulling out the medical chart. "I reviewed the background you gave on him. His infertility was due to damage from a teenage surgery. In rare cases, scarce ones, the body can still produce a small number of viable sperm. The probability is below 1%, but it's not impossible. This is what we call a medical miracle, Maya." "A miracle," Maya repeated, though inside her was a storm. She remembered the pain in Ethan's eyes when he confessed, the break in his voice when he said he couldn't give her a family. She had left because she wanted to become a mother. But now, she was carrying his children. Joy mingled with fear. What should she do? Tell Ethan and shatter the world he'd built around the belief that he couldn't father a child, or keep it a secret, to protect him from pain, but also deny him the chance to know his children. In the days that followed, Maya wrestled with the decision. She sat in her living room, hands resting on her belly, feeling the tiny lives growing inside her. She wrote in her journal, the letters shaky, "Ethan, you were wrong. We have children. But if I tell you, will you believe me? Or will you think I pity you? I can't bear to hurt you again." She called her closest friend, Chloe, a nurse at the hospital. In Chloe's small apartment, with rain tapping against the windows, Maya confessed, "I'm pregnant. They're Ethan's." Chloe set her coffee down, eyes wide. "Oh my God, Maya. Does he know?" Maya shook her head, tears rolling down her face. "He thinks he can't have children. He gave up everything because of that. Even me. If I tell him now, what if he doesn't believe me? What if it destroys him?" Chloe took her hand. "But Maya, he deserves to know. These children, they're part of him." Maya nodded, but deep down, she knew she wasn't ready. She feared Ethan would think she was lying, or worse, that he would return from duty, not love. She wanted to protect him. But more than that, she tried to protect her children from an uncertain future. "I'll do this alone," she said firmly. "They're mine, and I'll give them everything." Maya began preparing for single motherhood. She converted the guest room into a nursery, painting soft blue walls and hanging cartoon prints. She bought 2 stuffed animals, a bear and a rabbit, and placed them in the twin cribs. She named the babies the moment the ultrasound confirmed their genders. Noah, meaning peace, and Lila, meaning light. She chose to keep the last name Marshall to honor Ethan, even though he didn't know they existed. Every time she wrote Noah Marshall and Lila Marshall in the medical notebook, a bittersweet ache filled her chest. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Maya reduced her working hours, but still took on night shifts, saving every dollar for the future. She documented everything: the fluttering kicks, strange cravings, the nights she sang lullabies to her growing belly. She took photos and wrote letters to Noah and Lila, but never sent them. "You two are Mommy's miracles," she wrote. "And one day, I'll tell you about the man who loved me deeply, even though he never knew about you." When the day came, Maya entered the delivery room alone, clutching a nurse's hand as the pain tore through her. She refused to call anyone, wanting to focus entirely on her children. Noah was born first, his cry echoing through the room, followed by Lila, small but strong. When the nurse placed them in Maya's arms, she cried for joy, sorrow, and the overwhelming love flooding her heart. Gazing into Noah's blue eyes, identical to Ethan's, she whispered, "I'll give you the whole world." In the spring of 2021, Maya Thompson's small apartment was filled with color and children's laughter. Noah and Lila, now 3 years old, ran around the living room, turning cushions into a fort and fighting over the last crayon. Maya, a 32-year-old Black American pediatrician, sat on the sofa with a cup of cold coffee, smiling at her children. Though exhausted from her overnight shift at Grace Hospital, her eyes lit up when Noah held up a scribbled drawing and shouted, "Mommy, look, I drew a superhero." Lila, her hair in 2 braided pigtails, pushed forward. "Mine's prettier. It's a princess." Maya clapped her hands gently. "Both are amazing. Let's put them in the fridge." She stood and taped the drawings beside photos of the twins. Their first birthday, their first day of preschool, a trip to the park. The apartment, though cramped, was the home she had built for Noah and Lila. A home forged by a resilient single mother, though filled with unspoken voids. Raising twins alone was never easy. Maya worked night shifts to spend daytime hours with her children, often sleeping only 4 hours before dropping them off at daycare. She saved every penny, giving up coffee dates with coworkers to buy storybooks and toys. She was a devoted doctor at the hospital, always staying late to comfort anxious parents or console a sick child. But at home, she faced her challenges. Nights when Lila cried for the daddy from the storybooks, and days when Noah asked, "Mommy, why do my friends have dads but we don't?" Those questions cut deep. Maya told her children about a special friend, her way of referring to Ethan Marshall, the man who had loved their mother very much, but had to go far away. She pointed to the only photo she kept, one of Ethan smiling beside her in the park. "He's Mommy's superhero," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And he loves you both, even from far away." Noah nodded with eyes identical to Ethan's, though his gaze was filled with quiet wonder. Lila, more curious, often held the photo close and whispered, "I want to meet the superhero." Maya recorded these moments in her journal, where she poured out joy and pain. "Noah asked about you today, Ethan. I told him you were a hero, but I don't know if I'm lying. I want them to know you, but I'm scared. Scared, you won't believe they're yours. Frightened, you'll come back only out of duty. I chose this path, but sometimes I wonder, was I wrong?" She had never stopped loving Ethan, but she believed that keeping the secret was her way of protecting him. From the pain of thinking he was infertile, from the wound that truth could reopen. The milestones of Noah and Lila brought light to Maya's life, but each came with a hint of sorrow. On their first birthday, she baked 2 chocolate cakes herself, snapping dozens of photos as they blew out candles. But her heart ached, knowing Ethan should have been there. On their first day of preschool, Noah clung to her hand timidly while Lila ran into the classroom shouting, "I'm going to be the teacher!" Maya laughed, but once she returned to the car, she cried, wishing Ethan could witness their growing up. To balance work and motherhood, Maya relied on support from coworkers and neighbors. Sarah, a nurse at the hospital, often watched the kids during last-minute shifts. Mrs. Linda, an elderly neighbor, brought cookies and told stories to Noah and Lila when Maya worked late. But Maya rarely spoke about Ethan. Only Chloe, her best friend, knew the whole truth. One evening, after the children had fallen asleep, Chloe sat beside Maya on the sofa and asked, "Do you ever think about finding him? Even just so the kids can know their father?" Maya looked out the window, where the city lights shimmered. "Every day," she admitted. "But then I remember the look in his eyes when he told me he couldn't have kids. He let me go because he thought it was for the best. If I tell him now, will he believe me? Or will it break him all over again?" Chloe placed a hand on her shoulder. "But Maya, the kids deserve to know their father, and he deserves a chance." Maya nodded, but inside, a wall stood firm. She had built this life without Ethan, and she wasn't sure she dared to tear it down. She stood, quietly checking on Noah and Lila in the bedroom. Noah was fast asleep, one sock halfway off. Lila clutched the stuffed rabbit Maya had bought when they were born. She adjusted their blankets, whispering, "Mommy loves you, and I'll do everything to make you happy." Each day, Maya found strength in her children. Endlessly curious, Noah loved puzzles and asked questions about everything, from clouds to how hearts beat. With her radiant smile, Lila loved to draw and twirl around the room. But sometimes, when Noah looked at her with Ethan's eyes, or when Lila sang a song Maya used to hum with Ethan. She felt her heart tighten. She wondered if she was depriving them of something, of someone, or if she was also robbing Ethan, and even herself, of something irreplaceable. One afternoon, as Maya picked the children up from daycare, Lila handed her a drawing, a family of 3, Mommy, Lila, and the superhero. "I want Daddy to come home," Lila said sweetly. Maya hugged her tightly, tears rising. She said, "Someday, sweetheart." But she didn't know if it was a promise or hope. Maya sat by the window as night fell, watching the city glow. She opened her journal and wrote, "Ethan, they are my light. Noah has your eyes. Lila has your heart. I can't tell you the truth, but I promise to give them a whole life, even with me." She closed the journal, placing a hand over her chest, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat, the heartbeat of a mother, of a woman still carrying a love that had never faded. Winter 2021 cast a cold, quiet stillness over Ethan Marshall's penthouse on the top floor of a Manhattan skyscraper. The city lights shimmered through the glass windows, but couldn't chase away the chill inside him. At 34, Ethan, a white American billionaire with blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, was still the symbol of success. CEO of a global philanthropic foundation, gracing magazine covers with a perfect smile. But inside, he was a broken man, haunted by memories of Maya Thompson and the decision to let her go 4 years ago. After Maya returned the ring beneath the oak tree, Ethan threw himself into work as a form of escape. He ran charitable projects with a relentless focus, funding hospitals, schools, and shelters for people experiencing homelessness. But every night, returning to his empty apartment, he faced the truth. Without Maya, all his success meant nothing. He kept the one photo of her, smiling radiantly by the lake, hidden in his desk drawer, only daring to look when no one was around. Every time he opened it, his chest tightened with longing for those mornings they shared coffee, those nights she held his hand and whispered that he was enough. Ethan tried dating, hoping to fill the void. He met Laura, a bright and charming attorney who seemed perfect on paper. After a year, he proposed. But when Laura said she didn't want to adopt children, what Ethan saw as his only path to fatherhood, he realized he couldn't continue. "I need more than this," he said quietly, handing back the engagement ring. Laura walked away, and Ethan once again faced solitude. His career began to shift, too. Ethan declined a significant contract with a real estate conglomerate, unwilling to support a profit-driven project. The decision angered shareholders, and the media began questioning whether he was losing his edge. He pivoted, focusing instead on smaller philanthropic efforts, community libraries, and orphan support programs. He spent time at youth centers, reading to children, and every time he looked into their eyes, he imagined they were his. Children he believed he could never have. He told himself that if I can't have a family, I'll give other children a chance. But the pain never left. Ethan began writing letters, never to be sent, to the children he dreamed of having. In a leather-bound journal, he wrote, "If I had children, I'd teach them to fly kites, as Maya taught me. I'd tell them about their mother, who taught my heart to love." The letters became his therapy, his way of facing the truth that he had lost Maya because of his silence. He stored them in a safe, his secret, unknown to anyone. Ethan's health began to falter. He experienced mild chest pains, which he brushed off as stress. He refused medical exams, afraid the doctor might discover something worse than infertility. He drank black coffee, worked late into the night, and told himself that staying busy would numb the emptiness. But each time he passed the park, where he'd proposed to Maya, he stopped beneath the oak tree and felt a part of himself still there, shattered under that autumn sunlight. One night, after a charity gala, Ethan sat alone in his office, a glass of whiskey on the table. He opened the drawer and pulled out Maya's photo. She was laughing, curls caught in the wind, and he could still hear her voice saying, "You are my home." Clutching the photo, tears slid down his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Maya," he whispered. "I let you go. I was wrong." He began searching for her, quietly. He hired a private investigator, asking only for basic information. He didn't want to intrude. The investigator reported that Maya still worked at Grace Hospital, lived in a small apartment, and had never publicly mentioned her family or children. Ethan didn't know she had become a mother to Noah and Lila, his children by blood. All he knew was that she was alive and well, and that knowledge brought him both comfort and pain. She deserves happiness, he told himself. But his heart ached for just one more glimpse. Ethan changed his lifestyle. He sold off properties, including a rarely used yacht, and donated the proceeds to children's charities. He moved out of the penthouse into a smaller apartment near the park, where he walked each morning and remembered Maya. He joined volunteer programs, teaching children how to build model airplanes, and found small joy in their laughter. But every night, he opened his journal and wrote another letter. "My children, if you exist, I want you to know that I love you. Even if I never met you, you are why I am trying to be a better man." One afternoon, while reading to kids at a community center, a little girl with big brown eyes asked, "Do you have a family, mister?" He smiled, though his heart ached. "I have a family in my heart," he said hoarsely. The girl nodded, as if she understood, and Ethan wondered if he could ever reclaim that family, not just in imagination, but in reality. He didn't know that Maya was putting Noah and Lila to sleep just a few miles away, telling them stories about Mommy's superhero. Like a river, he didn't know that fate was quietly steering him back to her, and to the children he had never known existed. But deep in his soul, Ethan felt a flicker of hope, a faint light in the darkness, urging him forward. On the afternoon of June 27th, 2025, the lobby of Grace Hospital shimmered with sunlight streaming through its tall glass panels, where the inauguration ceremony of the new pediatric wing was taking place. Ethan Marshall, now 38, stood among the crowd, his charcoal gray suit perfectly tailored to his tall frame, yet his deep blue eyes were weighed down. He had just finished his speech as the primary donor, but his mind was elsewhere. That morning, his doctor had reconfirmed the infertility diagnosis from years ago, a painful reminder that he would never have children. A mild chest pain, a sign of cardiac strain he had long ignored, only added to his suffocation. Clutching a glass of water, he tried to blend into the applause, but his heart felt like it was being crushed. And then he saw her. Across the crowd, Maya Thompson stood, elegant in a navy blue dress, her curly hair tied high. At 36, she was still a dedicated pediatrician at Grace Hospital, and her beauty, the warmth in her brown eyes, the gentle curve of her smile, stopped Ethan in his tracks. For 4 years, he had tried to forget her, but every park bench, every cup of black coffee, brought her back. Yet it wasn't Maya who stole his breath. It was the 2 children beside her, around 4 years old, clinging to her hands like little birds. The boy, with curly black hair and blue eyes like Ethan's, looked around curiously. With dimples and a radiant smile, the girl pointed at a cluster of balloons. "Mommy, can we get one?" the girl asked in a clear, sweet voice. Then she turned to Ethan, her eyes sparkling. "Daddy, you want a balloon too?" The word daddy struck Ethan like a blade to the chest. He stared at Maya, searching for an explanation, but her expression shifted from cheerful to horrified. She tightened her grip on the children's hands, her lips pressed together. "Lila, sweetheart, that's not—" she began, but her voice faltered. "Ethan," Maya said, her voice trembling, as though his name carried an ocean of memories. "I didn't expect you here." The boy, Noah, Ethan heard her call him, looked up. "Mommy, is that the superhero from your stories?" Ethan's mind reeled. Superhero? What stories? He wanted to ask, but his throat was dry. Around them, the crowd continued chatting, unaware of the storm raging inside him. He looked down at Lila. Her smile was Maya's, but her blue eyes were undeniably his. Noah's thoughtful gaze seemed to study him, trying to decipher who this stranger was. "Maya," Ethan whispered. "What's happening?" She shook her head, panic in her eyes. "Ethan, we need to talk, but not here." But before she could say more, a sharp pain spread from Ethan's chest down his left arm. He staggered, the glass falling from his hand and shattering on the floor. "I'm sorry," he muttered, his voice rough, and he turned, pushing through the crowd. Behind him, Maya's voice rang out. "Ethan, wait!" But he didn't stop. He rushed into a quiet hallway, bracing himself against the wall, clutching his chest. His heart pounded erratically, his breath shallow. "It can't be," he whispered. "The doctor said, it's not possible." Noah's and Lila's eyes echoed in his mind like an accusation. Those children, his? But how? He had lived with the truth of infertility and accepted it like a sentence. Yet Lila's daddy and Maya's panic shattered everything he believed. He slid down to the floor, knees giving out. And then, darkness. When Ethan opened his eyes, he saw a stark white ceiling and heard the rhythmic beeping of monitors. A nurse, Sarah, stood beside him, checking the chart. "Mr. Marshall, you fainted," she said gently. "We brought you to recovery. You're stable, but your heart is under significant stress. You need to rest." Ethan tried to sit up, his head spinning. "Maya, was she here?" he asked, his voice raw. Sarah nodded. "Dr. Thompson brought you in. She waited until the doctor confirmed you were stable, then left with the two children." Ethan closed his eyes as a surge of pain and hope collided. Maya had been here. She had cared for him. But the children, Noah and Lila, who were they? He turned to Sarah. "Did she leave anything?" Sarah hesitated, then handed him a sheet from the chart. "She asked me to pass this along. It's a copy of your admission file. She listed you as a family member of the children." Ethan took the paper, his hands trembling. He scanned it, and his heart seemed to stop. In the family information section for Noah and Lila, Maya wrote Noah Marshall, Lila Marshall, guardian, Ethan Marshall. Their birth dates, 4 years ago, just months after their breakup. He looked at Sarah, his voice unsteady. "These are my children?" Sarah gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "I can't answer that, Mr. Marshall. But Dr. Thompson listed you as their father on their medical records. She's never changed it." Ethan bowed his head, tears sliding down his cheeks. "But I was told I couldn't have children," he whispered. "Doctors confirmed it." Sarah sighed. "Sometimes medicine doesn't explain everything. I suggest you speak with Dr. Patel, your cardiologist, and with Dr. Thompson." As Sarah walked away, Ethan stared at the paper, fingers tracing Noah Marshall's name, Lila Marshall. He remembered the letters he'd written to imagined children, the lines he'd never dreamed would come true. He reached for his phone and called Maya, but she didn't answer. He called again and left a message. Maya, please. I need to know the truth. Noah and Lila. Are they mine? He lay back down, eyes fixed on the ceiling. For 4 years, he had lived with the grief of losing Maya, with the belief he'd never have a family. But now, a sliver of hope, fragile yet burning, flared in his chest. If Noah and Lila were his, he would do whatever it took to make it right and become the father they deserved. But first, he had to face Maya and the secret she had carried for 4 long years. On the night of June 27, 2025, Maya Thompson's small apartment was cloaked in darkness, lit only by the soft glow of the nightlight in her children's room. Maya, 36, a Black American pediatrician, sat on the sofa, clutching her worn leather-bound journal to her chest. Her heart was in turmoil after the unexpected reunion with Ethan Marshall at Grace Hospital earlier that day. The image of him collapsing, clutching his chest, and the look of shock in his eyes when Lila called him Daddy haunted her. She had rushed him into the ER, stood outside until the doctor said he was stable, then quickly left with Noah and Lila, unable to face his questions. Now, in the silence of the night, Maya's phone lit up. 3 missed calls from Ethan. 1 voicemail. Maya, please. I need to know the truth. Noah and Lila. Are they mine? His voice, hoarse and raw, a blend of hope and pain, made her chest tighten. She wanted to answer, to run to him and say everything, but fear held her back. She feared he wouldn't believe her and would come back out of duty rather than love. Most of all, she feared he'd walk away again and break the hearts of Noah and Lila. Maya opened her journal. The trembling words from 4 years ago appeared. Ethan, our children are my miracle. I chose to keep it from you because I didn't want to hurt you more. But now I wonder if I've taken something away from them. She picked up her pen, handshaking over the page. Today, you saw them, and I saw your eyes, as if your world shattered and then was reborn. I want to tell you, but what if you don't stay? What if you hurt them the way I was injured? She stood and walked into Noah and Lila's room. Noah, 4 years old, slept soundly, one sock halfway off, his arms wrapped around a toy superhero. Lila, her braided hair falling over her pillow, clutched a stuffed bunny and murmured in her dreams. Maya adjusted their blankets, her heart aching with the memory of the hospital. Lila had called Ethan Daddy with such innocent certainty as if she had always known. Noah, more reserved, had looked at Ethan with curiosity and asked, Mommy, is that your superhero? Those questions made Maya realize that despite all her efforts to shield them, her children had already felt the absence of a father. She returned to the sofa and buried her head in her hands. As a pediatrician at Grace, Maya was no stranger to hard decisions, comforting parents and saving children in crisis. But this decision was beyond her capacity. She remembered long night shifts, worrying about picking up the kids on time. She remembered Lila's drawings of 3-person families, always asking, "Where's Daddy?" She had told them stories about Mommy's superhero, but now that superhero had reappeared, she didn't know if he deserved their belief. Maya picked up her phone and opened the one photo she had kept of Ethan, smiling beside her in the park, his blue eyes shining. She remembered the sound of his voice when he proposed, and how he held her hand like she was his entire world. But she also remembered the pain of learning about his infertility secondhand, and the way he had let her walk away without fighting for them. "Has he changed?" she whispered into the darkness. "Or will he disappear again?" She called Chloe, her only confidant, the one person who knew the truth. When Chloe answered, Maya said immediately that Ethan knew. He saw the kids. He passed out. He's been calling me. He wants to talk. Chloe sighed on the other end. You've kept this secret for 4 years, Maya. What are you thinking now? Maya bit her lip, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm scared, Chloe. Terrified. He won't believe Noah and Lila are his. Afraid he'll try to take them. Or worse, he'll show up and then vanish again. They don't deserve that. But you can't keep them in the dark forever, Chloe said gently but firmly. They're asking about their father. And Ethan. He deserves a chance, even if it's just to prove he's wrong. Maya nodded, though Chloe couldn't see her. I know, but I need time. I need to know he's here for them, not because he feels guilty, but because he wants to be. After the call, Maya stood by the window, staring at the glowing city. She thought about her work, the long hospital hours, the moments she held a child's hand through pain, the nights she rushed home to hug Noah and Lila. She had built a stable life for them, though far from perfect. But now Ethan threatened to shake the walls she had so carefully built. She wanted to protect them. But she also wanted them to have a father, not just in bedtime stories, but in real life. She returned to her children's room and watched them sleep. Lila murmured, "Superhero," in her dreams, and Maya smiled through tears. She remembered the moment Ethan collapsed and how she ran to him, heart pounding in fear. She still loved him, even if she didn't want to admit it. But that love now had to make room for Noah and Lila. "I'll do the right thing," she whispered, hand over her heart. "But I need to be sure, Ethan, for them." She returned to the sofa, opened her phone, and drafted a message to Ethan. "They are your children, but I need to know you'll stay, not just today, but always." She deleted it. Then she folded her journal shut and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she would face him. But tonight, she just wanted to be the mother of Noah and Lila, the woman who had fought for their happiness with everything she had. On the morning of June 28, 2025, sunlight filtered through the trees in the backyard of Maya Thompson's apartment, where Noah and Lila were playing on the grass, building a castle out of wooden blocks. Maya, a 36-year-old Black American pediatrician, stood by the kitchen door, holding a cup of coffee, her eyes clouded with worry. Yesterday, after the unexpected reunion at Grace Hospital and Ethan Marshall's desperate voicemail, she had agreed to let him meet the children. Her midnight message had been short. "Come at 10. We'll be in the backyard." And now, as the clock struck 9:55, her heart raced. Ethan, 38, a white American man with blonde hair and deep blue eyes, stood at Maya's front door, holding a small paper bag filled with hope and fear. He wore a simple blue button-down, no suit, no tie, just a man hoping to be a father. After waking in the recovery room and reading the medical files confirming Noah and Lila were his, he had called Maya dozens of times. She had only responded with a single curt message. He understood she was protecting the children, and he was determined to prove he was worthy of this chance. Maya opened the door, her expression guarded. "Ethan," she said, her voice colder than she intended. "They're in the backyard. Follow me." He nodded, following her through the modest apartment, past a fridge covered with Noah and Lila's drawings. The faint scent of cookies lingered in the kitchen, and Ethan realized this was the home Maya had built, a world without him. Noah and Lila looked up from their wooden blocks as they stepped into the yard. Lila, with her braided pigtails, beamed brightly. Noah, his blue eyes so much like Ethan's, was more reserved, clutching a block like a shield. "Mommy, who's that?" Lila asked, pointing at Ethan. Maya knelt beside them, her voice gentle. "This is a special friend of mine. His name is Ethan." Ethan knelt to their level, smiling softly. "Hi, Noah. Hi, Lila. I love your castle. Can I help build it too?" Lila nodded instantly and pulled him closer. "You can build a tall tower." Noah hesitated, but when Ethan carefully placed a block on the castle, he slowly joined in. Maya stood watching, arms crossed, her heart in knots. She wanted to believe in Ethan, but the memory of how he had once let her go still cut deep. She feared he was here out of guilt, not love. Ethan pulled out 2 old toys from the paper bag, a stuffed bear and a stuffed bunny that Maya had chosen for their crib 4 years ago. "These were once yours," he said, voice trembling. "Your mom picked them out when you were tiny." Maya froze, hand to her mouth. She hadn't expected Ethan to have them still, proof that he'd never stopped thinking about fatherhood. Lila hugged the bunny tightly. "It's so soft," she squealed. Noah held the bear, his gaze softening, then looked up and asked quietly, "Are you Mommy's superhero? Why didn't you live with us?" The question landed like a blade. Ethan glanced at Maya for help, but she looked away. He took a deep breath. "I made your mom sad, Noah. I went away because I thought it was the right thing to do. But I was wrong. I'm here now and want to stay. If you'll let me." Lila tilted her head. "Will you tell us superhero stories?" Ethan smiled, his eyes glistening. "I'll tell you the best one, about your mom. She built a whole world for you two. She's the real superhero." Maya turned away, pretending to wipe her hands on her apron to hide her tears. She remembered the nights she told her children stories about superhero Ethan. But now, he was here, flesh and blood, and she didn't know if she could trust him. She slipped into the kitchen, leaving Ethan with the kids. She watched him help Lila build a tall tower through the window and listened to Noah explain how the superhero flies through the clouds. His smile, the one she once loved, made her chest ache. She opened her journal and scribbled, "Ethan, you're here, and the kids adore you. But I'm scared. Scared you'll leave, afraid they'll love you, then lose you. I want to believe you, but I need time. I have to be sure about Noah and Lila." She closed the journal and returned to the yard, just as Lila pulled Ethan into a made-up superhero dance. Shy but curious, Noah began to follow, and their laughter rang out like music. As Ethan prepared to leave, he turned to Maya, his voice steady. "Thank you, Maya, for today. You don't trust me yet, but I'll earn it. I want to be their father, not just today, but for always." Maya nodded, her eyes softening, but still guarded. "Just don't hurt them, Ethan. That's all I ask." He nodded, gripping the empty paper bag. "I promise." Lila ran after him as he stepped through the gate and wrapped her arms around his leg. "Come back, superhero," she cried. Ethan knelt and hugged her, eyes misty. "I will, Lila. I promise." Maya watched from the doorway, her hand gripping the doorframe. She wanted to believe that promise, but 4 years of heartbreak had taught her how fragile promises could be. She held Noah and Lila close and whispered, "Mommy loves you." But deep down, she knew their world had changed. Ethan was no longer a bedtime story. He was real. And now, she had to decide whether to let him step into their lives, for good. On June 29, 2025, Ethan Marshall awoke in a hospital room at Grace Hospital, pale morning light filtering through the curtains. At 38, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed white American man who once symbolized success now lay in a hospital bed, IV in his arm, and machines beeping steadily beside him. The collapse 2 days ago at the pediatric wing's inauguration hadn't just been shock from seeing Maya Thompson and the children, Noah and Lila. It had been the warning sign he had ignored for too long. Dr. Patel, his attending physician, entered with a serious tone. "Mr. Marshall, you have a heart rhythm disorder. It's not immediately life-threatening, but if left untreated, it could get worse. You'll need a minor procedure to stabilize your rhythm, followed by rest." Ethan nodded, though his thoughts were elsewhere. He kept thinking about Noah's blue eyes, much like his own, and Lila's radiant smile when she called him Superman. After yesterday's visit to Maya's backyard, he'd promised to stay, not just for them, but for himself. Now, that promise was facing its first test: his health and Maya's continued distrust. "How long will recovery take?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Dr. Patel replied that it takes a few weeks if you follow every instruction strictly, but you'll need to change your lifestyle too. Work stress and emotional stress all contribute to this. Ethan closed his eyes, the memories flooding back. Years of late-night work, the chest pains he dismissed, the way he buried himself in charity projects to forget Maya. Once, he'd been the charismatic CEO of a major philanthropic foundation, but his reputation had taken a hit after turning down a multi-million-dollar real estate deal to focus on smaller, community-driven initiatives. The press labeled him the fallen billionaire, and his shareholders turned on him. But now, none of that mattered. Knowing about Noah and Lila changed everything. He wanted to live, not to prove a point, but to watch them grow up. The next day, after being discharged, Ethan made a life-changing decision. He met with his lawyer and ordered the sale of one of his most profitable subsidiary companies, a luxury real estate arm that once generated millions. "I don't need it anymore," he said firmly. "I want to focus on charity and my family." The move cost him his place in elite business circles, but he didn't care. He rented a modest house just a few blocks from Maya's apartment and began working remotely as a philanthropic consultant, helping grassroots organizations build libraries and playgrounds. He wanted mornings with his children, not endless boardroom meetings. He called Maya, asking to see Noah and Lila again. She agreed, but her voice remained distant. "Only in the park, Ethan. And don't make promises you can't keep." He understood. She was protecting the children, and he was determined to prove he wasn't the man who had let her walk away 4 years ago. That afternoon, in a park near Maya's home, Ethan sat on the grass, watching the twins play on the slide. Lila ran over and tugged his hand. "Superman, swing with me!" Ethan smiled and pushed her on the swing, her laughter floating like music. Noah, more reserved, held a soccer ball. "Do you know how to play?" he asked cautiously. "I used to be a soccer star when I was a kid," Ethan joked, gently nudging the ball toward the boy. They played quietly until Noah scored a goal and threw his arms up in celebration. Ethan scooped him up, his heart swelling with joy. It felt like it was healing, one beat at a time. Maya stood at a distance, arms folded, watching. She saw Ethan's patience with Noah and how he made Lila laugh. But she was still afraid he would vanish again, and the kids would be left heartbroken. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Ethan, you're here, but I still see the man from 4 years ago who stayed silent. How do I trust you now?" Back at his new home after dropping the kids off, Ethan opened his old leather notebook and wrote, "Noah, Lila, today I played soccer with you. I pushed you on the swing. I missed 4 years, but I won't miss another day. I promise to get healthy. I promise to stay, even if your mom doesn't believe in me yet." He called Dr. Patel to confirm his surgery for the following week. "I want to live," he said, voice steady. "I want to see my kids grow up." The surgery went well, but recovery wasn't easy. Ethan had to rest, avoid stress, and stick to a strict medication schedule. Maya, still hesitant, agreed to let him see the children twice a week, but only in public places. One afternoon, as he arrived at the park with storybooks in hand, Lila asked, "Superman, why do you get tired so much?" Ethan smiled, hiding the mild ache in his chest. "I'm training to be stronger, like a real superhero." Noah, sharp-eyed and quiet, looked at him and asked, "You're staying forever, not going away like in Mommy's stories?" Ethan knelt and took his hand. "I promise, Noah. I'm here to stay, no matter what." Maya, overhearing from afar, felt something stir inside her. She wanted to believe him, but she still needed time. She turned away, wiping her tears, and whispered, "Please, Ethan, don't break this promise." That night, Ethan stared at Maya's photo on his desk. For the first time in 4 years, he felt something he hadn't dared to touch. Hope. He was no longer chasing legacy or fame. He was a father now, one who would do anything for Noah and Lila. And he knew, if he wanted Maya to trust him again, he'd have to earn it not with words, but with a consistent, quiet presence. A light rain fell over the city on the afternoon of June 30th, 2025, casting a silver veil across the backyard of Maya Thompson's apartment. Maya, a 36-year-old Black American pediatrician, stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, eyes fixed on the window. For the past 2 days, since Ethan Marshall began visiting Noah and Lila regularly, the world she had built with such caution felt slowly unraveling. Ethan, patient, devoted, and tender with the children, was breaking through the walls she had spent years erecting. But the fear remained sharp and familiar, the fear that he would leave again. Last night, she wrote in her journal, "Ethan, you make the children laugh, but I'm afraid. Afraid to love you again. Scared to lose you again." Outside, 4-year-old Noah and Lila played under the awning, drawing with colorful chalk on the damp walkway. Ethan, 38, a white American with blonde hair and deep blue eyes, sat with them, his shirt damp from the drizzle. He had just recovered from heart surgery, but there was no sign of fatigue in his smile as Lila held up a drawing of a flying superhero. Noah, always the more reserved one, handed Ethan a piece of chalk. "Draw Mommy," he said softly. Ethan drew a curly-haired figure with a bright smile, and the twins squealed in unison. "That's Mommy!" Watching from the kitchen, Maya's heart tightened. She remembered the days when they were in love, when Ethan would doodle on napkins at coffee shops, when he'd hold her hand under the moonlight. But she also remembered the silence, the ache of him letting her go without a fight. Had he changed? She stepped outside. "Noah, Lila, come inside before you get soaked." Ethan stood, his shirt clinging to him in the rain. "I'll help them in," he offered. He guided the twins into the house, and as Maya handed them towels, their eyes met. A flicker of something old and dangerously familiar passed between them. Maya quickly turned away, pretending to wipe the counter. Then the phone rang. Sarah, a nurse at Grace Hospital, called to inform her that Noah had a mild fever earlier that morning and should rest. Maya rushed over, feeling his forehead. "Why didn't you tell me, baby?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I didn't want you to worry," Noah mumbled. Lila chimed in. "Superman would help." Ethan knelt, his voice steady. "Yes, Lila. I'll help." He turned to Maya. "What can I do? Medicine, blankets, anything?" Maya hesitated, but his steady gaze made her nod. "Medicine's in the kitchen cabinet, and he likes hearing superhero stories when he's sick." Ethan carefully measured the dose, gave Noah the medicine, and sat beside him on the couch, reading from a superhero book he had brought along. Lila curled up next to them, clutching her stuffed bunny. Maya watched, heart pounding. This wasn't just a man trying to make up for lost time. This was the man she once loved, now more grounded, more present than ever before. After Noah drifted off to sleep, Ethan gently tucked a blanket around him and turned to Maya. "He'll be okay. I'll stay if you want me to." Her voice was firm. "I can manage, Ethan." But when he rose to leave, the rain outside had thickened. Lila tugged at his hand. "Don't go, Superman. It's raining hard." Ethan looked to Maya, silently waiting. She sighed and motioned to the sofa. "Stay until the rain stops." He nodded and sat back down. Lila climbed into his lap, chattering about the superhero castle she wanted to build. When the children finally fell asleep on the couch, Maya and Ethan stepped out onto the covered porch, the sound of rain tapping softly overhead. She looked at him, her eyes softer now. "You've been good to them, Ethan. But I need to know, why are you here? Is it guilt, or do you genuinely want to be their father?" Ethan stepped closer, voice low. "Maya, I'm here because I love them, and because I've never stopped loving you. I was wrong to let you go 4 years ago. I thought I was protecting you, but I only ended up hurting both of us. I want to make it right, not just for them, but for you." His words pierced the last layer of defense around her heart. She looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity there, but she also saw her fear. "I've built this life without you, Ethan. I don't know if I can trust you again." He reached for her hand gently. "I don't expect you to trust me overnight, but I'll prove it, every single day, that I'm not going anywhere." And under the rain-soaked sky, he pulled her into his arms. When his lips met hers, time slowed. The kiss carried the memories of who they once were and the promise of who they might become. Maya pulled away, breathless, rain and tears mixing on her cheeks. "I need time, Ethan," she whispered. "Just don't hurt the kids." His eyes were red as he nodded. "I won't. I swear it. Take all the time you need." He pulled a folded letter from his pocket and handed it to her. "Read this when you're ready. It says what I can't say out loud." She took the letter with trembling hands. After Ethan left into the rain, Maya returned inside, the soft kitchen light casting a golden hue over her trembling fingers as she unfolded the page. Maya, Noah, Lila. I lost 4 years to silence. I can't promise perfection, but I promise I will stay. I will fight for you. Maya, you are my home, and I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you. She clutched the letter to her chest, tears falling freely. She looked at Noah and Lila, sleeping peacefully on the couch, and for the first time in 4 years, she felt a spark of hope, not just for them, but for herself. But deep down, she knew. If she were to open her heart again, Ethan had to prove that he wasn't just a superhero in stories, but a man willing to stay for real, through the storms, through the quiet, through it all. In the summer of 2026, golden sunlight spilled across the backyard of Maya Thompson and Ethan Marshall's new home, where a simple wedding ceremony occurred. Maya, 37, a Black American pediatrician, stepped out in a simple white dress, her curly hair loosely tied back, her smile radiant. Beside her was 5-year-old Noah, in a white shirt, holding his mother's hand with pride. Lila, her braided pigtails bouncing, wore a pink dress and skipped ahead with a velvet ring box. Ethan, 39, a white American with blonde hair and deep blue eyes, stood beneath the oak tree, the same tree where he had proposed to Maya 9 years earlier. He wore a navy vest without a tie, his gentle smile hiding a racing heart. The ceremony was intimate, just a few close friends, colleagues from Grace Hospital, and the joyful laughter of Noah and Lila. As Maya reached him, Ethan took her hand and whispered, "You're still my home." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. Noah stood between them and read a short line he'd written himself. "Mom and Dad love each other, and I love them both." Lila raised the ring box and shouted, "Get married, Super Dad!" Laughter erupted, and as Ethan and Maya exchanged rings, their kiss was met with applause and the delighted cheers of their children. 1 year earlier, after a kiss in the rain and Ethan's heartfelt letter, Maya had opened her heart again, but only on one condition. He had to prove his commitment, and Ethan did. He called Noah and Lila every night, making up superhero bedtime stories. He showed up in the rain with medicine when Lila was sick, and sat through Noah's silent tantrums with quiet patience. He moved into a small house, just a few blocks from Maya's, leaving behind his penthouse and donating the proceeds to an orphan fund. He worked as a philanthropic advisor, focusing on community projects. The media once called him a fallen billionaire, but he didn't care. "I have Noah and Lila," he told Maya, "and that's all I need." Maya, despite her exhausting shifts at the hospital, changed too. She learned to trust Ethan, to let him co-parent. In her journal, she wrote, "Ethan, you kept your word. You're not just their superhero. You're the man I love, again and always." When Ethan proposed again on a rainy morning, not on one knee, but simply holding her hand beside the kids, she said yes. "Keep it small, keep it simple," she said, "but make it real." Family life was never quiet. Each morning, Lila sang through her cereal, usually spilling milk. Noah, with Ethan's sharp blue eyes, insisted on wearing mismatched socks because superheroes don't need to match. Maya returned from night shifts to find paint fingerprints on the kitchen table and Lego castles under the dining chairs. Now working from home, Ethan made the kids lunch and left handwritten notes like, "Noah, superheroes eat carrots too," or "Lila, bravest princess ever." The house no longer felt empty. It was full of laughter, love, and beautiful chaos. Noah and Lila grew up with both parents. They loved hearing how Ethan met Maya, when she tied a little boy's shoelaces in the park. "Mom's a real superhero," Lila declared. Noah, now more confident, once asked, "Dad, were you scared to be a dad?" Ethan smiled and hugged him. "Yes, but I was more afraid of losing you. That's why I'm here, always." The kids called him Dad naturally now, and Ethan felt his heart whole again every time they did. Though Ethan's health still required monitoring, he stayed disciplined. He took timely medication, exercised light, and had low stress. With her medical background, Maya checked on him regularly, half joking. "If you skip your meds, I'm kicking you to the couch." He laughed and kissed her forehead. "Wouldn't dare, Dr. Thompson." One June afternoon, the family returned to the meadow where Ethan had once proposed to Maya. They laid a picnic blanket, ate under the open sky, and watched the clouds drift by. Noah skipped stones across a stream, while Lila wove flowers into Maya's hair. Ethan held Maya's hand and whispered, 9 years ago, I thought everything ended here. Now I know. It was just the beginning." Maya rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "You kept your promise, Ethan. And so did I." She remembered the days when she was too afraid to love him again. But now, she felt peace. "I love you," she said softly. He kissed her and whispered, "And I love you forever." As the sun set, Noah and Lila ran up and threw their arms around their parents. "Superhero family!" Lila shouted, and all four of them burst into laughter. Maya looked at Ethan, their children, and the golden meadow, and knew this was the happiness she had once dreamed of. Not perfect, but real. Love, she realized, wasn't about a dazzling beginning. It was about the quiet, everyday choice to stay, love, and build.